Many Christians miss the most important part about being a Christian. Maybe they define their faith by what they don't do. I don't get drunk. I don't do drugs. I don't get into fights. But actually, Jesus said that the Bible and the prophets can all be summarized into one main thing, and it is the most important thing, also known as the greatest commandment. He said the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, and mind. And then he said the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And then he said all of the law, all of the prophets hang on these two commandments. In other words, this is the most important thing. I think that if we all can hear Jesus in the room right now say, hey, everyone, nothing is as important as this for your faith. It is to love the Lord your God, heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And, many Christians struggle to understand the definition of our faith and to have a healthy faith because we're measuring the wrong things. We're measuring our spiritual activity, like what we consume. We measure what we don't do anymore. We measure the amount of times we go to church or to this event or that event, and the amount of podcasts we listen to. All great things, really good things. However, not the most important thing. We see this is not a new issue. This is an issue that has existed all throughout the Bible. I could give you several examples in Amos chapter 5. The people of Israel were planning this big festival. They were singing and dancing, this like huge worship service. Not that it was wrong that they did a huge worship service, but the Bible says they did not have justice and they didn't care for the poor and the needy. And so God said, your music is like nails on a chalkboard to me, away with your noise. In Isaiah 58, the people of Israel, they prayed and they fasted. What? Prayer and fasting, really, really important things. But it says they prayed, they fasted while they were exploiting workers. They were arguing, they were fighting with each other. Again, just not having love, right? And God said, you're kind of missing the point. The fasting that I desire involves sharing your food with the hungry. It involves providing shelter to the needy. It involves clothing the naked. Again, Ezekiel, another prophet, he called for worship in Ezekiel 33. The people came to the temple to worship God while they were all hoarding money from the widows and the orphans. And God said, it's like they're literally coming to a church service and they're passing all of these hungry and needy people, and they sit in there, and then it says that they hear it, and to them it's like a love song because they're like, they love it. How often do we hear a sermon and we're like, that is so good, and then we leave unchanged? That's exactly what was happening here. And Jesus said, these people worship me with their lips, but not with their hearts, and their hearts are greedy for selfish gain. This is not the worship that God desires. In Joel 2, the same thing. The people would tear their clothes to show how sorry they were for their sins. God, we are so sorry. And they'd rip their clothes. All the while, they were devising their plan for their next sin. And God's like, don't bother tearing your clothes, tear your heart, right? So what are we saying here? God is not after us to be more religious and more spiritual. God is after one thing. He wants us to have love. He wants us to have love. If you think about worship, the essence of worship is love. Worship is about loving God with our heart, with our soul, with our mind. In other words, with our heart, with our desires and our passions, with our will, right? With our soul. The Bible talks about soul as being our entire entity, our holistic self. So mind, spirit, body, everything, what we do, what we say, our thoughts, all of that embodies our soul. And then some versions say, love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, and strength. And that word strength is translated from the Greek word, which literally means very, like the word that we use very often. It means love the Lord with your veriness, with your might. Love him with everything that you can, with your resources, with your time, with your talent, your treasure. Love the Lord. Listen, we can listen to all of the sermons and we can listen to podcasts and Christian music all we want and go to small group and serve at the food bank and give our 10%. But all of those things, if we don't have love, are meaningless. If you think about 1 Corinthians 13, it says, if I speak in the tongue of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm like a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. I'm just kind of annoying to God. If I have the gift of prophecy and I can understand all of the mysteries and all of knowledge, and if I have the faith that can move mountains, but if I don't have love, I am nothing. If I give all that I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Jesus says, man, the love is the thing. That is what I am after. That is what the Lord is after. This is what true worship is all about. It's about loving him, not just with the outer surface of what we do, but actually loving him from our heart. And I think that so often, we look around and we're like, man, people go nuts for like a worship concert. And then they're driving home from the worship concert and they're cutting somebody off in the car and yelling at somebody at, the restaurant because they didn't get their order right. And we're like, man, is that really what God is after? Is God more impressed with us that we went to a worship concert and lifted our hands up in the air and sang and made a joyful noise? Again, a great thing. I'm a worship pastor, so I love those things. But is God more impressed with that, or is he more impressed with, oh, you know what? Somebody offended me. I'm not going to get upset at you, because when I offended Jesus, he didn't cancel me. Jesus didn't cancel me when I offended him. Instead, he said, no, actually, I'm going to go to the cross and die for you. And that is the kind of love he has modeled for us that we are to have for others. The Bible says faith without love is dead. It's meaningless. To say that we love God but don't love our neighbor is a faith without works, and faith without works is dead. And 1 John 4:20 says, if anyone says, I love God, but hates a brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, cannot love God, whom he has not seen. And man, God is just not impressed with the appearance of worship. He wants worship that burns with love, that first fills us and then spills over into love for our neighbor. And so what is the answer here? Is the answer for us to just try harder to muster up more love and be like, oh, I'm going to do better. I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to be greedy. Really, the answer isn't that, because honestly, at the end of the day, we just don't have it in us to muster that up. I mean, that's why Jesus had to come and die for us in our place, because we couldn't, right? But in Amos 5, he points us in the right direction. After God was just disgusted at all of the religious festivals and music that were done because there was no love and there was no justice and no mercy, God's words were simply this: seek God and live. And the same is absolutely true for us, that before Jesus calls us to live a life of faith, he first calls us to seek him. Before we can live a life of love, we first have to see God's love and experience God's love for us. And I want to encourage you that if this is where you're at, it's not about trying harder and doing better. It's about looking. It's about seeking God and live. And as Jeremiah puts it so well, he said, if you seek God, you will find him when you seek him with all of your heart. I go a lot deeper into this in this short 5-day identity reset that I have. It's free. You can download it by clicking the link below. And it's just a challenge to help us over 5 days. I mean, it's 15 minutes a day, some questions to work through and some things to read that I hope will be a helpful and valuable resource for you on your journey of having true worship.